everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. We're delighted to welcome Pushkar Singh, CEO of LetsTransport. LetsTransport is a Fosun portfolio company, co-founded in 2015. Pushkar co-founded this with two of his IIT batchmates, Sudarshan, Ravi, and Ankit, Parasher. They envisioned enabling last-mile delivery through a large network of mini trucks in India. And today, LetsTransport is one of the biggest regional logistics players in the country, operating in 15 cities and catering to 200 plus enterprises with a network of over 60,000 trucks. In the initial years of his career, Pushkar worked at ITC as an assistant manager in operations. He holds a bachelor's and master's degree in mechanical engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology at Kharagpur. He is recipient of the prestigious Forbes 30 under 30 Asia, 30 under 30 India, and the BW Techtor Award 2018. We are also joined by co-executive president of Fosun RZ Capital, Kapoor, and my name is Anushka Prasad. I'm a Wharton MBA candidate and a summer associate with Fosun. So thank you so much for joining us today, Pushkar. We're so excited to have you, and we are all just emerging from this lockdown, and I'm sure that you have some pretty fascinating stories to share about what this was like for all of you on the ground at LetsTransport. We think it's super important to understand and share perspectives on how things work when the whole economy was coming to an almost grinding halt. And you have the unique perspective of providing an essential service and working with truckers, a group that could have been severely impacted by COVID-19. But before we get into COVID-19, just for our audience that may not know you as well, can you describe LetsTransport?
Sure. Thank you, Anushka. Humbled by the introduction. Some of them were surprising to me as well. But yes, quickly describing what we've done and built, we help large brands such as Nestle, Amazon, with their last mile deliveries. Think of it as moving products between their distributors, retailers, or even to an end consumer like you and I. We do that. We empower about 200 brands which trust us, and about 59,000 truckers which kind of depend on us to provide livelihoods to them. What we do promise to our brands is one, reduction in their cost, which is primarily driven through our technology. And second, we help them with sales throughput by providing an elastic supply chain to their needs. So that's the benefit which is offered to the client. And for my truckers, which are largely independent driver owners, we democratize working with an enterprise for them. So for them, it's just an application they can download and work with 200 odd enterprises without having to deal with any of the backend management that they have to do. Not just that, because our assets sweat more, they tend to earn a lot more than what they were earlier earning. So that's what LetsTransport in a nutshell does. We're there in 15 cities today. And yes, it's been about 4.5 years of privileged journey. Fosun invested in about 2018 and happens to be one of our largest cheerleaders today.
Amazing. I think just to sort of go a little bit deeper, what was the main pain point that you were trying to solve? Can you tell us a little bit about the last mile delivery and trucking space and what the major challenges are?
Absolutely. So prior to starting LetsTransport, I was working with ITC. It's one of the larger consumer brands in India. I was responsible for product launches for them and hence dealt with a lot of logistics myself when I was in my previous company. That's where I encountered the challenges which logistics as an industry offered in India. The first challenge which I faced was our last mile logistics cost was twice that of the global average. So a similar consumer goods company in US would probably pay $1. It might pay $2 for a similar size transaction in India. So that was the first problem. When I dug further deeper down into the same problem statement, what I did realize was it was largely owing to the fact that our nature of suppliers or truck owners is extremely fragmented. Right? While across the globe, logistics happens to be more organized, in India it's not. When I further look at last mile per se, think of it as there are about 50 lakh small trucks, 5 million small trucks in India, and 95% of them are owned by drivers themselves. Right? So when I was in my previous company, I had to deal with 5,000 individual truck owners on a daily basis. Yeah. And managing that transparently, reliably is the challenge which I faced. What has happened over the last 5 years is with more distribution channels such as Udaan, such as Flipkart, Amazon, a brand is now stressed for distribution and are now trying to compete with capabilities which an Udaan offers. Right? They have a fear of missing out that my retailer would now want to order from an Udaan because the service experience is much superior than what we did in a primitive setup of working with fragmented driver owners. And I think what we're seeing are strong tailwinds where brands do now want to work with more organized partners to help them bring a superior customer experience to their end consumers. So I think those are two large tailwinds which kind of help us grow and onboard a few of our accounts. And that today essentially where we are.
Yeah. That's exciting. Tej, do you have any, I guess in terms of what, led you to this sector, what was exciting for you when you were looking at Let's Transport and the sector in general?
Yeah, so thanks, Anushka. I think to begin with, we were already investors in delivery, and we had seen a really good success with delivery. And I think when we met Pushkar, we were always intrigued by obviously his entrepreneurial spirit and also, the problem that he was trying to solve. Because there's been a lot of players which were there in the what I say, intercity space, but there were very few players who were in intra-city. Pushkar was one of them. And initially, even I had to kind of come up in my head, how big of a problem is this? And we realized that actually it's quite a large play, approximately 30 to 40 billion. We always like infrastructure play anyways, because that, as you know, is really broken in India. And Pushkar, what we identified in his model was that he was serving different constituents. When he says that he has 60,000 trucks, which he serves, then to the e-commerce segment, to the retail segment. And when we were doing our diligence, what we realized that, people were able to make their sort of the fixed cost go to a variable cost. Which was sort of an eye-opener for us, because he can very easily balance his supply to what the demand wants. While if I'm working at Coca-Cola, which by the way I did, I started my career from there, and you have to always maintain certain trucks. But
Yeah.
when it's a rainy day, you don't need those many trucks. So why should I have? So I think when we did our diligence, we realized this could be actually a high margin logistics business, which is powered by data. And that's exactly what excited us and also excited our colleagues.
Yeah. Truckers are not necessarily an easy group to work with. And like you said, this is a really fragmented, there's a lot of players in this market. How did you get truckers to trust you and join your platform?
Absolutely. A well point that you've mentioned and you kind of called out, Anushka, it's a very underserved community as well. While yes, it is extremely difficult to deal with truckers in India, but I think if you take a step back and look at as to why that community has evolved the way it has, I think it's largely to do with them being underserved, where they have to fight for their existence on every front of life, right? I mean, be it right from financing a truck, which they would have to probably rely on an informal money lender by probably mortgaging their land. They do not have access to a lot of financial capital, organized lending, to a simple working capital loan which none of the banks would trust in. They do not have credit cards, unlike the US, where you have social security numbers, and hence the quality of life that a trucker spends in US is very different than what he does in India. Right. So yes, while the community is extremely difficult to handle, but one would have to empathize from where they come, right? And that's how you build products around it. So when we started this journey, we actually sat with a lot of drivers, their entire transaction, what happens, right? And tried building technology around that. Right? Think of it as this way: when Anushka travels in a cab from point A to point B, pre-Uber days, you would navigate the guy to kind of your place, right? But when a guy is carrying 10 products, there's no one to navigate him. Right? And yet all of us as consumers would pick up our phone and blast the driver as to why haven't you turned up on time. And these were smaller problems which you would empathize once you start living the life that they live. Right? And that's how our technology came up to solve their problems. To answer your question as to how we became someone as a preferred platform for truckers, I think these were small insights which we kind of incorporated in our business models. We understood the demographics of their drivers. What takes them. A few of them are looking forward to an assured earning because they want, they have liabilities of family at home, and they are fairly comfortable committing a certain hours. Then you have a few sort of drivers who want to be more of a gig economy. They are looking for flexible working. So all of this is an intricate model which gets incorporated in our platform when we assign jobs to drivers, right? To a simple level, right? While we don't appreciate much, but let's say if there's a pickup at morning 3 a.m. and you give it to a driver who gets up late in the morning, you're bound to have a failure, right? But you do have some driver set who have their preferential time of allocation, so on and so forth. All of this gets built into our technology. So while from a distant, logistics looks like an art of just placing a trucks, when you kind of solve it structurally, you have enough and more, insights which help you build a stronger business from a supply side. When you go out there and talk to a driver and talk to them about such insights, they think that we as a company are truckers first. We want to solve their problems, and in the process solve a problem which our client faces. So all our business decisions, including COVID, have always been aligned to what a trucker wants. Right? So while yes, a trucker would have seen an impact in their earnings in COVID, we reduce our take rates so that we are more equitable, fair, and transparent to them. And I think this is what goes in building brand equity within a community which has been underserved.
Yeah, I just want to add, Anushka, and actually it starts with the story of your classmate Mansi, and she and I were doing diligence.
Absolutely, I do remember that.
Yeah, diligence meeting in Bangalore and talking. I think I just, Pushkar is a very he's a very modest guy. So in the sense that he doesn't bring out some of the great things he has done for the truckers. And when we were doing our diligence, we realized two or three things which really hit us. One, they care about a regular income. For them, that's a most essential thing. They want to they have their fixed costs, which by the way are not going down. So I think what Pushkar brings on table for them is if they work hard, obviously, then you have got a way to make money, which is also number one, regular, and number second, transparent. That's the other thing they value a lot, is transparency in terms of how much money they make, because some of these brokers who were in between, they would not be transparent about what they're making at the end of the day with the large enterprises. And that's what Pushkar brings out with the app that he has, where they can transparently see what's happening. The third thing is like timely payments. I think that's the third thing we take away, is that they care about getting sort of money in the bank when they deserve, rather than having this 15 days of just waiting for your money. Which, and if even if for me my salary doesn't come on time, I'll be
Absolutely.
quite curious. So I think those things were really, really important for us when we did our diligence. And obviously the love for Let's Transport. We even quizzed them that if we give you more money, would you switch? And I think about almost 80%, at least what we interviewed, said they like the management, they love how they are treated, and that's where the empathy comes in. And that was also a big eye opener for us.
Thank you so much, Tej. Appreciate that.
Oh, that's fantastic, especially in this time. It's great to hear stories like this.
Absolutely.
On the other side, though, for enterprise, how do you ensure the quality of the truckers, on the supply side?
Right. I think that's a fair point from a client side, and that's one of our USPs that we offer them. Now, when I was in I was in ITC, because it was a very opaque system of working with individual fragmented driver owners. There was not a systematic way of analyzing what has happened. Right? It was a day-to-day task where you're battling every day to kind of have trucks on your place. To give you some numbers, industry benchmark is about 85% reliability, and our mission was to move this number to about 95% and up. Because what happens is, from a supply chain perspective, if you plan for 100% reliability and you just have 85% of your trucks turning up on time, chances are Anushka, if she goes out to find a can of Coca-Cola, you would not buy a can because there was never a can existing out there. And instead you buy a can of Pepsi. This phenomena is known as stockout situation and results in sales loss for brands. This number hovers between 15 to 25% in India. And this is what we wanted to solve for. So when we go and pitch to a client, we say, what, our reliability would be north of 95%, only because we are large aggregators of trucks. Right? What our technology does is we predict whether a truck would arrive on time. If not, you don't have to worry. We would find another truck, and for you, it will be a seamless experience. For a layman context, think of it as 5 years ago when you wanted to hire a cab, and it was a very unorganized market. The cab driver cancels upon you. You would have a nightmare finding another cab for yourself. But in an Uber, the moment a driver cancels the transaction for you, there's another cab waiting for you. So as an end consumer, for you, it's a seamless experience, right? Now, when I translate this to supply chain, our technology results in 99.3% reliability against an ambition of 95%, which is why we're so focused on building the trucking community on our platform very well. Right? Now, when you go and offer a 99.3% reliability to a client, it makes them think that, yes, this is a value which gets created on the table where I'm able to sell more. And not just that, I'm also able to lower your cost while I do this for you. How I lower my cost is, when you think of a large consumer brand, most of your sales as a Anushka, as a consumer, you would buy your groceries on a Saturday, on a Sunday, because that's when you shop. Now, when I was in ITC and I had to plan my dispatch, I would need 100 trucks between Monday to Friday. And all of a sudden, I would need 200 trucks on Saturday and Sunday, because all of a sudden my sales would have an uptick. Now, when you're dealing with a fragmented driver community, communicating this to a driver is extremely difficult. Right? When you're talking to an aggregator, what we do is we analyze different industry verticals. Right? We also work with an e-commerce company. What our platform shows is most of e-commerce orders are done on a Saturday and Sunday, and your delivery starts Monday onwards. So an Amazon would need 200 trucks on Monday and Tuesday, and would need 100 trucks on the remaining part of the week. Now, what we do is we offer 200 permutation and combination across clients, and hence they do not have to maintain idle inventory with them. This as a moat is a very strong network effect that as and when I keep adding more industries and clients, this increases my moat around the business, which is why we are able to offer a high reliability and a lower cost for them in their supply chain structures. So that's what ticks and brings client on the platform. Once you do this, the fact and the benefit why I said we are in a privileged industries, because none of the large family-owned logistics companies operate in this space, they like switching to us as a platform because switching costs from a driver owner is not high. So when I go and close an account of Coke in a city like Bangalore, Coke and I, we both of us are excited about expanding it to all 15 cities that I'm present in. So for me, it is an extremely stacking business once I close an account. Second, because I create value for both driver side as well as supply side, we do not believe in incentivizing or discounting any of our supply and demand. We take healthy gross margins across all transactions that we do. And because we're so trucker focused, our drivers are happy parting of commissions as high as late double digits commission to us. So that's the kind of value that we're creating for them.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, wow, that's great. Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I was just thinking logistics is, is a heavy paperwork, compliance sector.
That's the baggage left by a lot of our older generation.
Exactly, yeah.
Honestly, I was naive enough to understand. I hold a thesis on dynamic vehicle routing using heuristics, and I thought that's the problem I'll be solving.
Yeah.
Trust me, we are still very primitive in logistics, and you're still cleaning up a lot of baggage which was left by earlier generations. No complaints against them. It's just that industry isn't matured that far.
Yeah. So actually, just the story on that also is, when I saw some of the numbers at LetsTransport, there is this. Pushkar was trying to explain to me that there is this proof of delivery.
Yes.
I said, what the hell, what is this?
Exactly. You wouldn't understand why it happens in our industry.
Yeah, I was like, once you have delivered, you've delivered. Living in like a world where we expect our goods to come in 2 hours. So if we are keeping this proof of delivery business, but then he explained and how at least with the more online people like Amazon, etc., he's actually shortening the window of this proof of delivery.
Oh wow.
So that is one good thing. And the other thing is also where you're working with some of the, without naming some of the large retailers, where you are building the functionality for them to.
That's right.
So I'll be the happiest person if this proof of delivery
Absolutely. Likewise.
Digital process. So
it's so simple, right? I mean, a proof of delivery is nothing but a piece of paper which tells that this has been delivered.
Yeah.
There's nothing scientific or nothing big about it. But if you look at how a trucker is impacted with this, just because of reconciling so much paperwork, it eats up 15 to 20 days of his capital.
Yeah.
Right? Now,
I would probably make a suggestion to all the, your retail or potential
absolutely.
customers. I think you will go as far to give some discount if this POP can be reduced, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why such problems exist, and between a wider community, what excites all of us to work is, if you look at logistics, right? Our largest company is about $350-400 million in India, barring the new age companies, a traditional publicly listed company. In China, and that company has been there for 50 donkey years. If you look at China, right, SF Express started in about 95, is about $30 billion company.
Wow.
This means India's largest publicly listed company is 1.5% of what China's equivalent is, right? Now, when you look at the problem most fundamentally, right, none of us in our campuses would have ever seen any of these traditional logistics companies being day one recruiters, right? So if you look at the entire intellectual manpower which has existed, it's all people who have risen through ranks, who have seen the same processes for 50 odd years. What I believe, what new age companies bring to the table is we're able to attract talent from various walks of life, right? From investment banks, from consulting companies, and you throw smart people at a very wide industry with a lot of structural problems. And you're bound to get great solutions at every aspect or every juncture of what you're trying to do, right? It is not just to do with intra-city trucking. If you look at delivery, right? the team that they have built is probably phenomenal as one of the leading tech companies.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're bound to get brilliant results, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a big problem to be solved.
Yeah, on that actually. So, you mentioned delivery, and there are others in the truck aggregation business today. So what do you think sets you apart? What is your differentiator in this market?
Right. So in 2015, when we started this firm, right, there were 106 competitors. Yeah. So everyone back in the day wanted to be in Uber for trucks. I mean, that was the talk of the town. I think I wouldn't say we did a lot of great things. I think, yes, luck was one of the biggest factors for us to kind of thrive till date. But our true north and what we fundamentally, always been true to ourselves were driver is at the center of everything. I think that relentless focus on solving problems for a driver, I think that kept us going well because we never had to discount at a unit level, which meant we were in a virtuous cycle of scale. The more we scaled up, the more profits we would generate. Unlike another business, which is in a negative feedback loop where you discount every transaction, right? And not going into deeper as to which strategies, right? But it worked for us. And I think that true north is right there with the company even today, right? I mean, when we solve for a problem, even if it's COVID, right? And when we talk about COVID, probably I'll talk about it more, but we were providing COVID insurances for driver much before COVID actually hit India. And that was an additional cost to us. But our simple agenda was, this is what is fair and equitable for them. They are frontline workers working day and night, and they deserve to be compensated for that. And which actually helped us. You would be surprised. We were very few players in India who were running trucks 80% of our fleet capacities, even during COVID. So all of this, I think, goes a long way in building a brand equity, which helps you build a virtuous business.
Yeah, we need more companies with values like that.
I hope so. I mean, even I'm in the process of figuring it out, but I hope, yes, that's right.
Speaking of COVID-19, how did the lockdown impact your services and, how did you all adapt?
Absolutely. I think, a lot of people club COVID and lockdown. We like to keep it independent. I think COVID was one impact on the business and the second blow was lockdown, and fairly different. Right? I mean, tomorrow it could happen that there's a blowdown again. I mean, lockdown again, right? Now, when COVID happened, right, which was early March, we started seeing some tremors in our supply side where drivers, and rightly so, were a little hesitant in doing these deliveries. That's when we essentially thought of giving them COVID insurances, masks, sanitizers. We circulated trainer videos and applications where only after you complete a certain set of training practices would you be allowed or given a transaction. Right? So we did all of this early March. When lockdown happened, probably third week of March, that's when regulators came heavily and harshly on these guys, where there were instances of lathi charge, where truck drivers were finding it difficult to move, right? And which also meant that people would not be delivering out. What we did was we worked with regulators, being an organized partner. We kind of worked across all cities to get something called as essential passes for them, which helped us in two ways. One, a driver was comfortable that, if I'm working with LetsTransport, a police guy or an authority is not beating me black and blue. And hence, I'm more comfortable working for them. Second, if a driver was working with probably a broker, he was not providing him intangible benefits like insurance, mask, sanitizer, so on and so forth. So contrary to what a lot of people say, we did see an increase in our activity on our supply side. We saw a lot of inbound interest coming in for looking for work. Right? So that is what we solved for supply side of problems, which is where we said, we're always driver first. When I look at my demand side of platform, when we segmented our revenues, we felt that about 25% of our revenues came in from essentials category, which meant the remaining 75% was high value e-commerce products. There was cement, paint, so on and so forth. Now we knew that 75% of revenues would get evaporated and contracted because of lockdown. People would no longer be buying non-essentials. What we did well was we went and did pilots with a lot of brick and mortar retailers and other essential brands, providing them with a little bit of a knowledge of working with online delivery companies and helping them bring a capability of online deliveries for them. You'll be surprised that pilot helped us in catalyzing onboarding of enterprise accounts. So during the lockdown, we had inbound interest coming in from large companies, and we were able to start an enterprise account in as low as 3 days. So we signed up about 25 large accounts in a matter of 2 weeks. This was a time when DMart was delivering to your house, Spencer's were delivering to your house, so on and so forth. Not just that, right? When you look at enterprises in India, and they've always been cost-centered to most of our conversations, right? Where the conversation, I've been working with a local guy who's been there for 15 odd years, so on and so forth. Now, when you were stress testing your supply chain during COVID, all of those started failing out. Because at the end of the day, they were fairly fragmented, with not the right reach, not the right systems of reliability intact, which is where we saw a lot of strong tailwinds coming in, where a brand like a Nestle or these large corporates felt for the first time the need of working with an organized transporter. Which is what a platform brings to your table. While as a transporter, I might have an ability to bring 10 trucks, but the moment 10 drivers are absent, I'm reduced to nothing. But when you look at it as a tech platform, if there are a shortage of 10 drivers, I would be able to get 10 more from my platform. And for me, all of that is all automated, right? Which is where we started seeing a lot of inflow, even from our existing accounts, upselling within territories we are present in.
Yeah.
So from a mere 25% of revenue, which we were projecting, we were at about 85% of our revenue because of all of this. And today we are fully recovered from COVID. We are we are probably doing better than what we were doing before. And all of this when our 75% of non-essential revenues have still not come in, by the way. So my journey of 25% to 100% in 2 months is all essentials.
Wow.
So that's been a journey so far.
Yeah, I can imagine. Any, battle scar stories you want to share? Stuff on the ground?
Oh yeah, a couple of them. I think hats off to the entire team which made it possible. Extremely agile. You're practically shifting gears on a week, which is difficult when you've built a structured team which is mission driven, right?
Yeah.
Now, some of these stories were, you'll be surprised. While we've seen videos of drivers being beaten around, ground zero team being beaten around, we had cases of as high as 10 cases a city that we were operating in. At a day, at the second, third day of lockdown, we were having 150 to 200 cases of harsh behavior to our either ground zero team or our driver community, solving it in an empathetic fashion wherein you're also instilling confidence that what, tomorrow this can still happen, still you can get beaten around, but I want you to go and do this delivery for me. And that's a whole different ballgame, right? I mean, it's that's being harsh. But I think what we did realize was, if you instill a mission of where you make them realize that a person is able to buy grocery because you have done that delivery. Otherwise, there are people, the older community, who would not probably be able to get groceries. That, I think, drives people to run and work more. We were very communicative in our steps that we were taking to prevent that from happening. But at the same time, we were also educating them. Yes, that's a risk which we run. But trust me, the entire company is working that gets reduced. In the next 3 days, while we did have a few stray instances, our cases dropped from 200 to 0. And we popularized this across all our driver community. Right? After 4th day, there was no cases of any sort where we were running at least 10,000 trucks a day across India.
Wow. Amazing.
So it was a difficult time for us, but I think we've the worst is probably past. But yeah, fingers crossed, looking forward to more.
Yeah. So how has all of this, COVID-19 separately, lockdown separately, how has all of this changed you as a human being, how you manage your team or how you're thinking about your business?
Absolutely. I think I'll start on the reverse order. I think from a business perspective, I believe we've been trying to kind of catalyze the change that why organized platform play is necessary in India, because your costs are high, so on and so forth. I think COVID has just accelerated that for us. No longer we need to have that conversation, what you need to do this in your setup, right? We get inbound interest. So I think that's what's solving us from both supply and demand side, where even a trucker today feels, yes, a tangible benefit is not just cost, but also a lot of intangible benefits which come across with it. Coming back to your other point, how we have as a team changed, right? Now, if you look at our setup, right, we work a lot with our driver partners, which is largely on the field. Now, in a setup which is a both cross-functional between field as well as technology, when you're marrying both of them, all of a sudden you say, what, you can no longer go out on field, right? I mean, that is essentially saying, what, I'll take 50% of the capability away from business. When we started City, we talked to drivers to kind of onboard them, educate them on what we do. We had to move to digitally acquiring truckers and onboarding them. And you'd be surprised, as a team, there were local innovations where people were doing WhatsApp video calls to drivers. What, this is how this app runs. So I think that drive of having local innovations at every frontline warrior, I think that is something as a spirit we developed. We were in our comfort zone, this is how it was, and we would definitely have some few efficiency levers, so on and so forth. But I think that is a big change in our team, right? You'll be surprised. We were so mission driven. we articulated that we had to recover our revenues, otherwise things might become gloomy. And probably poured their, blood, sweat, everything in it, and that's how we probably recovered so soon. But the fact of the matter was there were smaller local innovations which I can't even talk about because there were so many. Lucknow had a different challenge. Vijayawada had a completely different challenge. Some were doing WhatsApp, some were doing, calls. I really don't know what is happening. But what I know is after 2 months, a lot of innovations resulted in we were back on feet. I think what it led to was having or being a mentality of being prepared for something which you've not prepared for. While you do have business continuity plans, but some things are definitely not probably even thought of, right? I think that definitely brought in a lot of agility in the team. Beyond that, I think empathy was, we doubled down on empathy. And I think we've seen, at least in the short term, that benefits definitely came back to us. So while when we were lowering our take rates, we had debates around it, but we still wanted to be true to the driver community. And I think that we weren't expecting a return this short or probably this immediate.
Yeah.
And I think that gives us more confidence to probably solve the mission where we were. I think that's in a nutshell what we did.
On a personal level?
Oh, I think the fact that you can beg, borrow, and steal and get back. I think that's one takeaway for all of us. But yes, I think the systems were stress tested. I mean, no one had prepared. It was unprecedented. Even in our wildest dreams, we wouldn't have imagined something to be done of this nature, right? Just to give you some scale, we're talking 15 cities digitally run, digitally acquiring truckers who are a notch lower than an Ola, who would probably not even know a smartphone, right? These guys are people who use Nokia 1100, by the way.
Wow.
How do you manage all of that? It's a whole different. I think those learnings are fairly intricate, but I think what we did take away from it that, beg, borrow, and steal, and you'll be there. I mean, that's been my takeaway from the situation.
So, question for you, Tej, how has and both actually for both of you, I know, how did Fosun, what is the story behind how Fosun became a part of the LetsTransport journey, and how has the journey been for both of you?
Yeah, so I'll start, and I think then, so basically I met Pushkar, and we were in our small office, and then he came and he drew the whole I still remember the whole kind of office with his thesis and his explanation, on what the business is, etc., etc. We probably spent like 2.5 hours, I think, if not less. That was the first meeting, and then he disappeared. He was like, so for about 3 to 4 months, we were not in touch. And then we met briefly at a cafe again. One point I could not get my head around was like, he kept saying that actually B2B is much bigger opportunity than sort of there were some other competitors who were doing SME led sort of a model, and I was still confused, but then he finally kind of said, Tej, do you think shipping from factory to retail shop is much bigger opportunity, or from there to somebody random in the house? And I then I got it. It was like, oh, like a aha moment for me. I said, yeah, he's right. And then we started our journey, and then we got deeper into the business. I was evaluating other models as well. And other thing we learned from our delivery experience is that in India, you got to go enterprise first. Not that you have to go ignore SMEs, but you can get there because the demand on the SME and the consumer side is very, very choppy, because you send a truck from, let's say Gurgaon to Manesar. I mean, would you get a return back it's very hard to know, right? And so I think that those all things put together, and then a lot of discussion with Pushkar, and a lot of work we did together and build our own thesis on the Intra-City opportunity, and that's how it all came about. For us, it was also his team, his other teammates, and Pushkar's energy is just amazing. Like I said, that was another standout thing for us because we look for champions. So I think he's one of them.
I think that's Tej being modest, but I think while I've had the privilege of interacting with a lot of investors, I think looking at an industry from a first principles level and not being biased with what the herd community is thinking about, I think I have to give it to Tej for having that conviction, and not just at the time of investments, but I think right throughout my journey. Right, I think I've seen Tej challenging me, I've seen Tej thinking about business models with me. But I think his ability to trust your decision, to empower you, to kind of guide you when you've done right, to kind of hold you accountable when you've not, I think that is not just investment is not about building conviction onto the business, right? It's about the entire journey that takes forward from there. I think that journey both of us have beautifully traversed. I think we've learned a lot our way, and I think good thing about having an investor who has probably thought through the business before investing is that the next time you're meeting him, his questions are not just something which comes out of the air. It has to be an experience which has been there. Either you have an ability of convincing him otherwise, or that yes, that's a valuable input coming on the table. So all of our conversations would be more constructive rather than just throwing questions around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank
you. So where do you see LetsTransport in the next 3 years?
I think I'm quite bullish about the entire industry. I think
as I see it as a IPO.
Yes, absolutely. IPO. We would do it together. I'm sure economically it'll be a good outcome for sure. But I see as a company there are about 50 lakh trucks. I'll be happy if I'm able to empower about 10 to 20% of those truckers in India. The reason why I talk about that number in specific, as I said, there have been large companies in India who have solved this structurally. Delivery was a front runner in this industry. I think if had delivery not been there, people like you, me, Tej would have not even looked at logistics, right? I mean, logistics still was for us, what is this?
I love logistics.
Yes. Really. That's essentially a change which I think delivery brought and is being carried forward by all our new age companies, not just me, even my competitor, to make this as a sector which attracts the best talent. And not just that, it delivers a large outcome. It becomes something which represents the entire tribal community. I'm not excited about just growing revenues, growing take rates, but the fact that have you structurally solved every problem that a driver faces, right? Which could stem from discovering working with an enterprise, right up to solving a credit need for him. Right? We cross insurance, we cross loan products to them, not because we are getting money out of it, but because I want the driver to genuinely save more. At the end of the day, we are as successful as my driver partners are. If at the end of the day he gets to keep 30% more earnings, is when I can think, yeah, can you give me 10% out of it? Not the other way around. And I think that's where I think about 20% of truckers of those 50 lakh is what I'm targeting. And I hope to achieve that soon.
So, I'm going to get a little bit personal now. Sure. It's also my last question for the evening. Okay. Who are you? Who is Pushkar?
You have a rapid fire round.
Let's not do that right now.
Next time.
He's a bachelor. So
round 2. No, but who is Pushkar outside of work? What do you like to do at home, or who are you outside of?
Right. I think post my startup, I think it has blended into one. But I think pre that, I was a water polo player.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I've represented my universities as well. Wow. I had a lot of other interests. I think now because of balancing time, not that I have any complaints around it, but I think it just gets reprioritized. But I do have some qualms about being freak about fitness. So yes, I do work out a little, not too much, but not as much as I would do. But yes, I would do that. Excited about new technologies, like reading stuff about them, and I'm a movie buff.
What have you watched recently that
everything. Think of anything on Netflix, I would have done it.
Give us one recommendation.
Everything. Yeah. So I think think of anything, right? I mean, I would have done it and probably watched it by now.
But so this is something that I know a lot of people ask, but I think it often is a fun question. But is there something that you've read recently that you think is good that you recommend to us that changed your mind about something, or even just you had fun with?
Oh, absolutely. I think not something which I read recently, but I would go back 10 years ago or probably even 15 years ago. There's a book by Captain Gopinath, right? He happens to be the founder of Deccan Airlines, the low-cost carrier, right? And in his book, he comes from a very humble background. And in his book, he actually mentioned that, the reason why Deccan started off as a helicopter charter company. The reason I dreamt of a helicopter charter company was I didn't know the price of a helicopter. Had I known it costs millions of dollars, I would not even thought about it. And I think that's a thought I would leave it with. I mean, that's a book I think, anyone would be able to relate to it. It has its own set of ups and downs, but I think there are definitely good takeaways for people to kind of read. I'm not sure if it's very spoken about, but at least even after 15 years, I do have that line, kind of etched in my mind. And I think that's what essentially every entrepreneur does, right? I mean, had I known this industry had so many problems of proof of delivery to working capital, I would not have even started it. The fact that I didn't know, I was naive enough today, we're kind of solving it. I think that's a good thing about this.
Yeah, just to add, I have read that book. And,
is it? Simply Fly. Yes, it's a good book.
Yeah, Simply Fly. And I think not only that, he was a farmer. He went from
Yeah.
He went from being from army to farmer to selling
He was a dealer for Royal Enfield as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean the guy has done everything under the sun.
And everything.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so I think that's something which people should read. I think it's not widely spoken about. But
Yeah, so for me it was like a guy becoming from farmer to running an airline. It's an incredible journey.
I mean, that essentially sets that you can have a vision which probably any normal person could have.
Yeah.
That's great. It's an India dream.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he's done it.
So any last questions you want to take or any last comments you want to make?
Yeah, no, I think I just want to say all the best to Pushkar. And
thank you so much, Stage.
And I think it's been a great journey.
Likewise.
And we'll
get it.
Hopefully take it to a good IPO.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely right.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Anushka, for doing this. We usually don't have time for all of this, but that's what brings difference of probably good engagement patterns in life.
That's what interns help do. But yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And for our audience, we plan to continue these conversations with post and portfolio companies. So if you enjoyed this, stay tuned for more. We're going to have a lot more coming out.
Was I the first Bakra?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what happens then.
I'm just going to stop the recording.